your purpose on earth is to create waste, and you are not doing anything to say, I will minimize it. And when you live in the denial that I will not minimize the pollution, I will not minimize the engineering bad effects that I'm getting, you are going to cause problems. When you create compounds in chemistry, you are doing something that nature doesn't understand. You have cobbled it. Might as well figure out how you uncobble it, or if you've cobbled it, learn how to go on continuing using it till otherwise it's waste. It's going to lie around you in the air, in the water, in the land. We are going to make change, but we are going to make it in increments. And I play the role of the market because I know with individuals and with some collections, the market has a better and more efficient way of changing it. If the incentives of the market align, and if you are not greedy, and if you are not destructive in your thoughts, you can do right things.
In this episode, we dive deep into the fundamental understanding of climate change and how we process this critical information in our daily lives. We explore how basic physics underlines our climate crisis, moving beyond complex predictions to understand the simple truth about waste generation and energy consumption. The conversation examines how different people process climate information based on their circumstances, the interplay between science and engineering in finding solutions, and the role of incentives in driving behavioral change. Our guest for today is Sathyanarayanan Sankaran, a pioneering figure in sustainable urban solutions who brings 3 decades of experience in using technology and data to solve urban issues in mobility and energy. As the architect of Altmo, a gamified mobility intelligence platform, and the bicycle mayor of Bangalore, Sir has been instrumental in reshaping urban mobility. His work extends beyond technology. He is the host of Uru Labs podcast, a leading urban affairs podcast in India, and the strategy lead for urban problems at Rainmatter Foundation. This conversation was recorded in May 2024 as a part of the Future Talks Co program. Thank you so much, Satya sir, for taking out time and for your willingness to share your knowledge and wisdom. Thank you.
My pleasure to be talking to you, Anirudh.
Sir, let me first begin by just asking, what do you feel about the climate crisis as such? And the following question to that would be, how do you process this information of climate change that you receive? So what is the framework for you to process the information that we read in our daily lives about climate change? And as we all know that Bangalore is in the center of heat waves right now. So in that regards, how do you process the information that you receive and what you feel about climate crisis these days?
So the climate crisis is already here. We all know that. And it used to be a few years ago, oh, this is in the far out future. We don't need to worry about it kind of a scenario. But now it is not that anymore. We are seeing it right here. And it's been said for many years. If you ignore basic physics and you try to think that science doesn't apply, this is what you get at the end of it, right? Look, I take a very scientific approach to trying and understanding this, right? There are many people who process it differently. People whose livelihoods are affected will process it completely differently. Is my food on the table at stake? Is my livelihood at stake? Will I not be able to go to a job anymore? Will I not be able to grow my kids anymore? Will I not be able to afford the next meal? They process things very differently from people who have privilege, like we have something going on in our lives which put food on the table, and now you need to process it. So in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, different people process inputs differently, and that's the bias that we carry, and that's what affects us. What critically affects your ability to live tomorrow is the first thing that comes up. Some people have the luxury of thinking about the global meltdown and the global climate change crisis, and there are large systemic issues that we have created that needs to be solved at a different level, right? And the solutions that come up there don't necessarily translate quickly. The trickle down doesn't happen to everybody's livelihoods. So there are different levels of interventions required. And for me, the way I consume it, being a part of the problem and trying to be a part of the solution, I process it as, where can I play a part? How can I do something that can change this for the better, inevitably some amount of harm also gets done in every solution that we put out. And if we consciously call that out and say, if I'm trying to get people to cycle who are going to work, I also need to be cognizant of the fact, and I'm using a technology solution to do that. I should very well be very clear that I am working with an elite set of people who are small in number, and I'm not going to be able to affect or help the rest of the people, the blue collar workers who don't have access to technology, to be able to solve their problems. Now, some people would come and say, you are not solving the problem, you might be creating more of a problem. And for me, it is that if my solution helps a certain set of people who are causing the problem to switch to a solution, I've done my small bit, right? And like this, we aggregate a bunch of people working on many different propositions around climate change, each working with their own constituency, if I call it that. So there are lots of people who are working with livelihood workers and their wage, how it is being affected, how their livelihood is being affected, how their food prices have increased, how their cultivation of crops is affecting their livelihood, climate change. These are things I don't even know how to empathize, how to understand, how to grasp, how to kind of say, what can I do, right? It's not about just giving money and saying, oh, I helped someone. It's also about saying, do I even understand this well enough? Why is it that the sea level rise is going to drown out someone else? Can I see that place? Why is it that the heat wave is affecting cropping patterns here? Can I see that place? Which places are these? How do I see them? How do I talk to these people? And this is where bringing out those voices become effective at that level of people who are affected. And there are people working at those levels, and we need to know how to support them. I may not, with my solution, be able to support them, but those who have the wherewithal might want to work. So different people consume things differently. You might consume it differently. You might consume it from a legal angle based on what you have. You want to look at the legal provisions that are there. Whereas a technologist will apply a technology solution. You might say, is there an app for this? This. You have your hammer. And if this is the nail you want to hammer at, you might. In the end, in this entropic world of everybody proposing solution, is there a common achievable goal that we are all heading towards? What does that look like? It is very difficult for you to think that you can guide every solution in a particular way, right? You only have to figure out, increasingly I'm realizing, we only have to apply the inversion principle, right? Famously made famous by Charlie Munger, which is, what do you not want happening? You don't want people dying, you don't want people's livelihood affected, you want people to have a decent quality of life. If what we do affects that, we need to think about why we are doing it. And my goal is always to understand that piece and know more about that. It's a lifetime of learning, but that doesn't mean you will only do things when you finish the learning. There is no finishing to the learning. But the point is, are you able to update certain information and shift your goalposts? Are you able to pivot your solution to say, am I doing harm? Can I stop that? If more and more people start thinking about that and saying, in my quest and my greed for my livelihood, am I affecting other people's livelihood? How can I minimize that consciously, morally, legally? The more I learn, the more I want to learn only that.
So you pointed out a very interesting fact in the beginning about the science has been very clear. And I think that entire sentence in itself speaks volumes as to, again, that who consumes what information. Because science has been something which in itself has been saying different things as such. Like it's been very recently that the international community unequivocally started saying, and in fact, there were certain scientists who were again, opposing uh, uh, to climate change as well. And just on the other contrary, right, science has been portrayed as the panacea of all the problems, right? But at the end of the day, there's also a barter there, because at the end, like, artificial intelligence will solve a lot of problems, but then again, it's also created a lot of problems for climate change, right? So while you're saying this, how do we draw the balance between science? Because science as such is also is I see science to be two aspects: one that we understand and one that we don't know. IPCC chief last year pointed out that 2023 turned out to be a year which we never expected, with all the science wherewithal that we have. So how do you see that? How do we make sense of science as such? Like, Yeah.
So there's a difference between science and engineering. We need to be clear in that distinction. We classify everything under science. And also scientists, the way they do this complex mathematics is not understandable by many people. And there will always be conflicts in science based on how you draw your boundaries of your evaluation. So people will always crib on the boundaries of evaluation. Oh, you made a closed system and you're evaluating that and, ceteris paribus, all of these things. So there will always be disputes on how you measure these things because there are just too many parameters. So engineering is what we build every day as solutions to our problems, right? As a human mind, we go out and engineer ourselves, engineer our cities, engineer our consumption, engineer our way of life and everything else. And that is a trajectory in time that is heading towards something. Science is the laws of nature. We are trying to understand it using English and mathematics. We are understanding it using mathematics and articulating it using science. What are we talking about? We are basically essentially talking about the second law of thermodynamics, which is entropy. Right? We are leading to an increasingly entropic universe and the world itself. And at some point, people are even saying our human beings and life on the planet itself is existing only to increase entropy or help increase entropy, right? But in our mind, our engineering wants to have low entropic way. Now, how do I phrase this for common man? Every time you receive sunlight, let's say, for example, from somewhere, it is coming as low entropic energy. That's what life is. And everything from the plants to the animals to us and everybody else rely on this energy, consume energy in different forms, in the form of food and in the form of the elements that we consume and whatever else, right? So at the end, we consume this energy and we create more entropic forms of energy, which means we distribute this as waste. We waste a lot. It's also called, it's not called energy anymore, it's called exergy, which is a scientific concept, which basically says your efficiency of conversion is very low. In fact, it has been shown that in the world, the amount of energy we get, let's assume it is in 2022, around 700 exajoules, sorry, my tech piece keeps coming on. Exajoules of energy, right? 700 exajoules. Out of that, only 11% is usable energy. Everything else is waste. We are wasting. And it is coming out mostly as heat and whatever it is. And when we engineer chemicals, when we take raw materials from the earth, like petroleum and everything, and we do something with it, we chemical engineer it or we do something, and then we create equipment out of it. We don't know how to make it in such a way that it can go back there. It can never go back there. Then we are left with more and more waste and we don't know what to do with it. And a lot of that is getting wasted and abused. Where does all this go? The chemicals of all the acids that we have produced, all the nitric oxide, the sulfur dioxide, the carbon dioxide and everything else. We don't have enough absorptive capabilities and we don't know how to bring it back, what we call as biodegradable or bioconsumable or whatever it is. If you don't know how to do that, you are increasing the entropy in the planet. You're putting things that you don't know. And this is the laws of nature, which is you are causing harm. If you are denying that you are causing waste, then you don't even understand basic of who you are. You are creating waste. Let's accept that. And you are consuming energy extremely inefficiently. Let us understand that. That is science. And you are engineering things. Now, when you're engineering things, you're making them out of your hand with your knowledge and whatever else your brain tells you to do. And this is where we need to kind of combine and say, whatever the study is about how this pattern is going to be, where it is going to be hot, where it is going to be cold. If you do this, it will get hot. If you do this, it will get cold. This is 1.5 degrees. This is 2 degrees. The various ways in which we measure also has the ability to cause certain confusions. But the basic of science is there. Every piece of energy you get and everything you dig out of the earth or make something out of it, you don't know how to put it back. So you're going to be left holding it. You might call it reduce, reuse, recycle, do all of these things, but your purpose on earth is to create waste and you are not doing anything to say, I will minimize it. And when you live in the denial that I will not minimize the pollution, I will not minimize the engineering bad effects that I'm getting, you are going to cause problems. It is common sense. You don't even need science for this. It is common sense. You dig something out, make steel, and then you throw it back after 5 years. What do you think? What do you expect it is going to be? It's not going to go back into being a mineral again. It's not going to go back into being an ore. It's going to be lying around somewhere. Petroleum, you took it out. You made plastic. Can you make it back into petrol? No. What are you going to do? It's going to be lying around. It's like cleaning your house. You will hide it here, you will hide it there, you will send it to somebody else and say, my house is clean, but it is there somewhere. It is not going away. If you accept common sense that what you have created is not going away, what are you going to do with it? And all that the people are saying in IPCC is when you create all of this wasted nonsense that you have created and engineered, it's going to be around. The pollution is here. And now when you create heat and you are not allowing it to escape, you are going to leave out you heat. If 11% is the only usable energy that we have got, what did you do with the rest 89%? It is around. Where is that heat going? You are even trapping it and saying it's going to be here. That's all it is. That is the basic sense. We can't communicate that because this is like somebody telling you a story. Scientists can't tell the story. They have to get numbers down. And when they get those numbers down, they create closed system. Entropy is also defined in a closed system, but the Earth is not a closed system. It's an open system. You keep getting energy on one side. On all sides every day. You get 3.8 million exajoules of energy. You're only consuming 700. Where is all that energy going? You either let it back out or you're going to trap it. If you trap it, you're living in a hot box. If you're living in a hot box, you can't deny it. What are you going to deny? You're living in heat. What are you denying? You can deny this scientist, you can deny that scientist on what he said it and how he calculated. You'll deny some other scientist on how he calculated. Oh, look, you built a closed system like this, you forgot some parameters, or you use some suspect data. You're trying to predict weather. How can you even, that's the whole point of chaos theory, is that a small change somewhere else can have so many effects somewhere else. That's what you felt. So you're beating people up on prediction. Prediction has never been good. You're only trying to determine some regression you'll do and you'll say it is likely to go this way. You can't hold them for saying it didn't go that way. It just rained outside. You said it is going to be hot. What are you beating people up on? You are living in a tinderbox. Accept that. Don't agree on some scientists, but accept the fact that you're living in a tinderbox. How do we save ourselves? Don't save the planet. It will keep rolling around until it dies. When do you want to die? You want to die quicker? Die. If you don't want to die quicker, figure out how we solve this problem.
I think this idea of paraphrasing the problem, as you said, it's very insightful to just realize from the fact that how do we define the problem as such as well? I think it is very profound to understand the problem that we are generating. The end point, come howsoever you put it, the end point is that we are generating waste.
Yep.
It's never going to go back.
Can you ever deny that you are not generating waste? You cannot. How can you deny? Everything that you consume has to generate waste. You will absorb some amount of it and build yourself up. The carbon is going inside, your hydrogen is there, and it builds up. Your nitric compounds are all a part of your body. It's all a part of what is the tree? The tree is made up of carbon and hydrogen, right? I mean, it's there. But the rest is waste. Can you ever say we are not generating waste? Either in the form of air, or bad water, or bad products, or bad elements that we have mixed elements into something that we ourselves don't know how to degrade it back. It may never degrade back. When you create compounds in chemistry, you are doing something that nature doesn't understand. You have cobbled it. Might as well figure out how you uncobble it, or if you've cobbled it, learn how to go on continuing using it. Otherwise, it's waste. It's going to lie around you. In the air, in the water, in the land, it's there in your house somewhere. In somebody's house, in the city, in the air. It's not going away. How do you make things go away back to where it was? You can never do that to the kind of efficiencies we need. So how do you even heat, for example, that you generate can never be 100%. Otherwise, you'll have 0 Kelvin to infinity Kelvin, right? That never happens. You'll always have inefficiencies in motor. In fact, the motor vehicles that we use are hardly 20% efficiencies. What happens to the rest 80%? It's all heat. 11% is all we actually have as usable energy that we are taking in. Everything else is waste. If you say that we don't have waste, the basic of science you don't understand. And if that is what you want to live in, you can clearly live in denial. So IPCC is an intelligent way of trying to predict something. But basic science is this. You're getting waste and you don't know how to manage waste. It's lying around. That's the point.
I think it's good to understand it is just as an indicator as to where we're heading or what are the possibilities. But just to realize the potential as to it's only trying to give us direction, the science still remains the same.
The science remains the same. What they're trying to say is, okay, 1.5 degree. They're trying to mollycoddle us into saying, look, you guys all don't want to change, but I'm telling you the effects. It could be 1.5, it could be 1.8, it could be 3 degrees, it could be 2 degrees. We are trying to tell you, please, you are going to be hurt. You how less hurt you want to be, we will try and make some studies for you, we'll do some predictions for you. You go and beat them up for trying to predict something. Excuse me. You say, oh no, not 3 degrees, 1.5 degrees. Who cares? You're still having problems.
It's very interesting the word that you use, that you guys are not going to change. We are trying to make sense. We're going to make sense out of these things that are present in front of you. So, how do we take this point further? How do we incentivize this change? Like, is this incentive financial linked? Is this incentive a conscious thing? I mean, there are feedback loops, which would feed into one another. But where has to be the first point of, I would say, the lever which we can pull, or maybe we are pulling, from your information? I would love to know how you interpret this information to be. And maybe it's too big of a question to ask, but just to take a sense of where you are coming from.
Okay, let's acknowledge that it's too big of a question. And the reason is each individual has a way of thinking. And this is why I talk about we all have our biases, we all have our wills and wishes. If we are strong-minded, we will stick to what it is no matter what. If we are a little more reasonable and we are listening, we might accept some things. And there are all kinds of people in this world, from the stubborn to the people who are willing to accept certain facts and change themselves. We have to figure out in this complex ecosystem, this is why society is a wicked problem, because you don't have a perfect engineered solution for this. You have to take many people along. And what the IPCC and others are trying to create is an imagined reality of what our Earth could be if we all pull together. And anyway, in public policy, we don't do all, and zero or nothing is not there. We only have levers to tweak and say, how can policies nudge people to do certain things better? And people don't like being told. And this is why the opposition. If I tell you you are doing something wrong, you get offended. Some people more than others, right? So instead of telling, how does human behavior work? I give you tools. And tools are unfortunately engineered solution. It has its own unintended consequences. It has its own inefficiencies and everything else. But that is what you live with, right? How do you create imagined realities of a better world? Because you can show it to them, but it may or may not happen again. You can't come and tell me you showed me the best world and then it didn't happen. I will always come back and say, for 80% of you didn't pull along with us. That's why it is not there, right? You'll always have something that is not going to go as per plan because you're predicting. But if we pulled ourselves in a certain direction, using the market, using the society, and using the state, how do we bring the trio of the state, market, and society to pull ourselves in a different direction? And it always works on incentives and disincentives, right? The individual freedoms always exist to make choice happen. What you do with that choice is you understand the biases, you understand the norms, and craft the norms in such a way and put some rules around it to create some disincentives, and use the norms to say positive incentives. And at different levels, you give incentives. And these are all collective actions of problems. So you try to create collective benefits for people. If we collectively, this layout achieves to do something else, we all benefit by having better water. If this whole village, or if this half of the city, the eastern half of the city, manages to manage their water better, we all have water to drink. Is that too hard to achieve? Let us aim for that. So we engineer certain goals and try to achieve those, right? And we have to live with suboptimal outcomes. It is not all going to be engineered exactly the way you want it. But you said that's what they're trying to say. Hey, 1.5%. Hey, 3%. You do these many things, you will get to 1.5. Let's try and how many of these can you do? We all have nationally defined contributions that we agree to in COP. Then each country comes back and then they try to tell the state. The state tries to tell the city tries to tell the ward tries to tell the people. And in all this masala, half of the story is gone. And every time somebody tries to tell something down the line, it breaks down. If it is pure governance led, it is going to have a problem. It will always look for coercive measures. Then you have to bring the industry and say, what shit are you guys doing? Let's pull our act together. Why don't we do something that is beneficial for everyone? Here's extended producer responsibility. Here are scope 3 emissions. Here is your listing. Here's ESG goals. A ton of things we try to come up by ourselves. We again engineer systems. We engineer processes. The thing you can control is if you engineer the processes in such a way that there are incentives and disincentives, the outcome will broadly align with the goals, right? And you create certain 0 to 1 kind of inventions, which can, at a split in the path of our trajectory, some things might move us in a certain direction. AI has moved us in a different direction. Now you can pull everything back and go this way or keep adjusting that and moving together. You don't know what other investment is, what other 0 to 1 invention is going to come that will completely alter the way we work. A lot of paper printing on notes used to happen. Now it is all digital and payment. That 0 to 1 invention kind of led us in a different path and adoption became large. There are some trajectory changes that get wide adoption. And that is the large focus that you can do. You can't micromanage these things. Many people will offer solutions around this, and then you can kind of drive in a certain direction. What are these large trajectory changes? In what ways are those? Is it in energy consumption? Is it in food? Is it in waste? Is it in water? Is it in something else? How do you look at all of these things? What binds us together? What do we not want happening instead of what we want happening? We don't want these 5 things. Everything else I can't control anyway. It's a complex system. But I'll help you guide towards these goals that you don't want happen. If you align with this, we are good, right? So it is a constant effort of mankind to move towards making ourselves survive on this planet. Some people want to escape that also. They want to send rockets to the Mars and colonize that and live there. Entropy is the same everywhere. That is also going into towards more entropy. It's not going to be any different. And if you try to colonize, it's not about you. It's about what you can do there, right? So anyway, there are different approaches to these things. And you should be okay with the fact that some people want to run away. What you have to accept is you cannot run away leaving shit behind. Because some of us don't want to run away. And we want to make something of where we are. You can't make the call for us. So this is the same thing, it flows down. I do something cannot mean that it affects somebody who doesn't have access to the means and is dying somewhere else, right? We have to know, it's not about giving him money. It's about saying, what do I not do? Not about giving him money and say, you find your own solution. You engineer your way out of this thing. That's usually what we are doing, We'll give you technology that we are using. You find your way. Here's a bunch of money also. The point is to say, I will not do certain things that is harming you. That is harder to do. There's a loss aversion. Somebody was telling me the story in Australia. They tried to do this no plastic bags and bin liners and things like that. A huge revolt. How can you not give us plastic? 3 generations of our are used to that. In some country in Africa, they banned plastic and everybody was like, we don't care. We never use plastic. You can do what you want. Right? There's a loss aversion there. I am losing something that I'm used to. I have to change my way. How dare you? You're impinging on individual freedoms and things like that. So you will have repercussions on everything. Nobody likes to be told that you're doing something wrong. But when it is there, where are these reasonable people who can drive us in that direction? Or you fight entropy, laws of physics. Go back and try and tell the sun, don't give me energy. That's not happening. Or tell your body, don't produce waste. Have 100% utilizations. I'll keep myself at 0 Kelvin. That's not also happening. You are not in charge of physics. Something is going to happen. You only learn to manage your engineering that you create.
So now you talk about engineered solutions around incentives and disincentives, and you yourself have implemented such solutions on ground at many occasions. Now taking the discussion from a very broader level to a very localized level, while you engineered such solutions around incentives and disincentives, what were your learnings from that while interacting with people? Because I realized that these solutions, as you yourself said, that these whosoever says at the top, these have to percolate to the bottom. And you have been there and you have had experience there. So could you share your insights into that?
So I put skin in the game. So I play the role of the market also sometimes. While we try to do all of these big things on one side and try to create the strategy for how humanity goes forward, you also have to say, at the bottommost level, how do I understand the complexity better? So you come out and talk. Excuse me. me. So you put your skin in the game, and I start working with individuals. And I say, you as an individual, how do you think? How can I help you make better choices? What do I give you as a tool that helps you make better choices? So I created this technology app which tell you, if you want to cycle, here's how I can collectively help you move towards these goals. Here's what I show you what your footprint is. Here's how you can do this, you can do that, put a bunch of tools together, and be very clear about my impact. And say, we are going to make change, but we are going to make it in increments. And I play the role of the market, because I know with individuals and with some collections, the market has a better and more efficient way of changing it. If the incentives of the market align, and if you are not greedy, and if you are not destructive in your thoughts, you can do right things. So that's the effort, is you do something to learn more and see how you can change the needle, and how you plus a few other people can change the needle, right? And in that, you could do, of course, it is increasingly difficult and expensive to do 0 to 1 inventions. So we are looking at saying, incrementally, can we increase efficiencies, and can we help people make better choices? And that learning helps me to understand how this complexity is going to affect our movement towards the larger goals that we are achieving. So I skip all the middle layers, work with the people themselves, because they have individual choices to make. And in some of these choices, like if you take public transport, for example, there are larger entities involved, where you're also trying to see, can the market make it more efficient? Can you do this? And, governance get out of the way a little bit, and try and see how we can enable and align incentives, align incentives, align incentives. Can we make the industry more honest by removing a lot of the moral hazards? That life is a series of principal agents problem, like somebody said, right? It's I don't remember who it was. I think it was Ruchi Sharma. Life is just a series of principal agent problems, which means there's always information asymmetry. Somebody is trying to always hoodwink the other, and there are effects that will happen. There are moral hazards that are there. There are lots of failures that happen by market doing this bad engineering, inefficient engineering, and all that. And as humankind, we're trying to make it more efficient, more better, and with more exergic efficiencies. So at some point, what will happen is, these kind of efforts, more and more people involving themselves in individual choices, steering small collectives together in some directions, and seeing how can that be templatized to get more people to believe in that option as a possibility. How can you, in my own domain of transportation, I say, how many of you can cycle? How many of you can walk? How many of you can take public transport? How do we move more efficiently in the inefficient system that has been built? Then go back and say, if this system is already inefficient and half the people are struggling with it, how can you make it a little more efficient? So everybody is grappling with complexity in their own small domain, not just the large emission related stuff. So we have to get this act together little by little, and it comes both top down and bottom up. You cannot just say this or that. It has to meet midway from both, and all participants, market, society, state, understand your roles and play your roles.
So I think my last question to you would be, like, we are talking about these engineering solutions around incentives and incentives, and just correlating it with a little bit of psychological aspects too. So for example, this engineering solutions that we have about making people incentivized to use bicycles. My question to you would be, like, moving beyond those incentives and disincentives, is a person beyond that very choice being able to make other environmentally conscious choices?
I see that. Like, if you do waste segregation, you have a reason to do it, because you believed I needed to segregate. If you believe segregation is just sorting it out, that's the word we use, but actually it is waste management, better waste management, reducing, reusing, recycling, repairing, whatever you do, right? Once you get used, once you're doing that, you're doing it for a reason that you want to manage it and not cause some problems, correct? You understood that. If you understood that in one domain, I am sure it can pass on. If you have adequate information on water, you will save water as well. And if the same knowledge is passed on and say there is a transport related issue, you will do that as well. So your starting point can be waste, your starting point can be water, your point can be transport, your starting point can be air, or any of these combinations. Once you are into one, it has effects that can be cross-pollinated into the others. And I've seen that repeatedly again and again through practical experience. I have empirical evidence of many people who do one thing also doing the other thing, of course based on convenience. They know they want to do, some things are harder. The person who is doing probably waste, switching off lights or whatever they are doing for the day, and a few others, has minimally gotten into it. If they maximally get into one, they might still have a challenge doing transport. It's not that they don't want, they may have obstructions. Maybe they are invalid or unable to do that piece. So you can't hold them against that. But you know that they are trying to reduce some amount of things. So once that ability of understanding that you are causing problems and that you have to minimize sets in one domain, it will come into the others. So if I know all the people that are cycling, they want to do something on waste, they want to do something on water, they want to help other people who are not that well off. There is a appetite for saying, if I've given up something and I'm doing something different, I can repeat that in other areas. And a large percentage of that cross-pollination does happen.
I think from what you've said, we can say that be the change you want to see in the world and let the ripple effect happen and good things come your way and for others as well.
Yep, it's just do your thing. Don't say the other guy is not doing, so I will not do. You at least you'll be self-righteous and complain that the other person is not doing. At least I know you are doing. When you come back and say, if you start preaching from where you are on your high horse, I know you are at least on the high horse, that you've done something, right? We can moderate that preaching, but at least I know that you have done something before you say something. And that is good enough for a start. I will moderate out all the sayings, but then it's important that people do their bit and show that they are doing their bit and tell others that they are doing their bit and collectivize a few others saying that if you do this, you belong to my community and we can do certain exciting things when you do that.
Couldn't have asked for any more insights, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thank you very much, Anirudh. It was a pleasure talking to you.